I'm going to write a complete 12,000-word story based on your outline and requirements. I'll break it into 8 parts, as requested format, it properly for voiceover, and ensure all the specific elements you requested are included. I'm Claudia, 63 years old. After my husband died, my daughter Katherine invited me to live with her family. I was overjoyed at the chance to be close to my grandchildren again. Little did I know that my son-in-law Thomas had different plans for me. When Katherine delivered his ultimatum, I was stunned. The choice was clear: become their servant or leave immediately. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up for yourself when family tried to diminish your worth. Life with Martin had been beautiful. For 40 years, we built a home filled with laughter, respect, and deep love. We had our struggles, sure, but we faced them together as equals. He was my best friend, my partner in every sense. When cancer took him last year, it felt like half of me went with him. Our modest house in Vermont suddenly felt enormous, without Martin's booming laugh filling the rooms. I'd wake up reaching for him, only to find cold sheets. The garden he loved so much became overwhelming to maintain alone. Grief is a strange companion. Some days I could barely get out of bed. Other days I'd be almost fine until some small thing like finding his reading glasses would shatter me all over again. After 6 months of this isolation, Katherine called. "Mom, why don't you come live with us in Boston? The kids miss you terribly, and you shouldn't be alone in that big house." Her offer brought me to tears. Katherine had always been independent, making her own way since college. While we spoke weekly, our relationship had cooled somewhat after she married Thomas. She visited less frequently, and when they did come, Thomas always seemed to have urgent business calls pulling him away from family time. Still, the thought of being near Noah and Emma, my precious grandchildren, was irresistible. Noah was 8 now, a curious boy with Martin's thoughtful nature. 6-year-old Emma had inherited my artistic tendencies, always creating something with her small hands. FaceTime calls weren't enough. I longed to hug them, to be a real presence in their lives. "I'd love that, sweetheart," I told Katherine. "Are you sure Thomas is okay with it?" "Of course, Mom. It was actually his suggestion." That should have been my first warning sign. Thomas had never shown much interest in me before. But grief and loneliness clouded my judgment. Selling the house was harder than I expected. Every corner held memories of the life Martin and I had built. I sorted through decades of accumulated possessions, deciding what to keep, what to give away, what to sell to. My friend Diana helped, gently pushing me when I became too sentimental about everyday items. "You're not losing your memories by letting go of Martin's coffee mug," she reminded me. "And Katherine doesn't have room for all this in Boston." In the end, I kept photo albums, Martin's favorite books, our wedding rings, and a few pieces of furniture with sentimental value. The rest I either sold or donated. The house sold quickly, giving me enough money to contribute to Katherine's household and maintain some independence. Before leaving Vermont, I visited Martin's grave one last time. "I'm going to be with our girl and the grandkids." I told him, my hand on the cool stone. "I think this is what you'd want for me, not to be alone." The 5-hour drive to Boston was filled with anticipation and nervousness. I hadn't lived with family since Katherine left for college 25 years ago. Would I fit into their routines? Would I be helpful without overstepping? Most importantly, would I find the connection I so desperately needed? Katherine lived in a beautiful colonial house in an upscale suburb. When I pulled into the driveway, Noah and Emma burst through the front door. "Grandma!" they shouted, launching themselves at me before I could even get out of the car. Their small arms wrapped around me, and for the first time since Martin died, I felt truly anchored to this world. Katherine followed more sedately, her smile warm but somehow constrained. She had lost weight since I'd last seen her, and there was a tightness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Mom, welcome," she said, hugging me briefly, "but the kids have been bouncing off the walls waiting for you." "I've missed them so much," I said, kissing the tops of their heads. "And you too, sweetheart." Thomas appeared in the doorway, tall and imposing in his business casual attire. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes as he approached. "Claudia, welcome to our home," he said, formally extending his hand instead of offering a hug. "Katherine has prepared the guest room for you. I hope you'll be comfortable." Even then, something about his demeanor made me uneasy. There was a coldness beneath his polite exterior, a calculating quality to the way he watched our reunion. But I pushed these thoughts aside. I was just being oversensitive, I told myself. This was a big adjustment for everyone. The guest room was lovely with a comfortable bed and windows overlooking the backyard. Katherine had added thoughtful touches, fresh flowers, a framed photo of Martin and me, my favorite type of tea on the bedside table. This is wonderful, I told her as she helped me unpack. I can't tell you how much it means to be here. We're glad to have you, she said, though there was a hesitation in her voice. Thomas thinks it's good for the children to have their grandmother around. Again, Thomas. Not Katherine saying she wanted me there, but Thomas allowing it. That first evening, we had dinner together as a family. I had offered to cook, but Thomas insisted we order in to give you time to settle. The conversation revolved mostly around the children's activities and Thomas's recent business success. Katherine said little, just smiled and nodded at appropriate intervals. So, Claudia, Thomas said as we finished eating, Katherine tells me you were a librarian before retiring. Yes, for 35 years, I replied. I loved introducing children to the joy of reading. Well, those skills will certainly come in handy here, he said with what seemed like approval. Noah struggles with reading comprehension and his teacher says he needs extra practice. I'd be happy to work with him, I said, smiling at my grandson. And of course, having you here to help Katherine with the household will be invaluable, Thomas continued. She's been overwhelmed lately trying to manage everything on her own. Katherine flushed slightly. I wouldn't say overwhelmed exactly. Don't be modest, dear, Thomas said, his tone firm. You know, you've been struggling to keep up with everything. That's why having your mother here is such a blessing. The way he said it made it clear I wasn't just a grandmother coming to be close to family. I was expected to be useful, to earn my place. Still in those early days, hope outweighed concern. I was with family again. The children were delighted to have me there, showing me their rooms, their toys, their schoolwork. Each morning when they left for school, they gave me extra tight hugs as if reassuring themselves I'd still be there when they returned. And I had such plans. I would be the kind of grandmother who baked cookies and told stories and created traditions the children would remember all their lives. I would support Katherine, maybe help her rediscover the confident, laughing girl she had once been. And perhaps even Thomas would warm up once he saw I could be a positive addition to the household. I was 63 years old, starting a new chapter after losing the love of my life. Despite the undercurrent of tension, I was determined to make this work, to create a new sense of family and belonging. I just had no idea how quickly those hopes would be tested or how painfully they would be shattered. The first week living with Katherine's family passed in a blur of adjustment and small pleasures. I established a morning routine of having coffee ready when everyone came downstairs. Emma liked to sit with me chattering about her dreams while I braided her hair. Noah was quieter, but would show me his latest Lego creation or a book he was reading. Katherine seemed perpetually rushed, checking her phone frequently with a nervous expression. When I offered to help with breakfast or packing lunches, she accepted gratefully. Thomas likes things a certain way, she explained, showing me how to cut Noah's sandwich into precise triangles and arrange Emma's fruit in a specific pattern. It's easier just to do it how he prefers. I noticed how she tensed when we heard Thomas's footsteps on the stairs, quickly checking that everything was in place. He would inspect the table, occasionally rearranging items before sitting down. The coffee needs to be stronger, he told me on the third morning. And Katherine prefers her toast darker, don't you, dear? Katherine nodded quickly, though I had been making her toast exactly how she requested. The children were my greatest joy, but even there, complications arose. When Emma asked me to read her a different bedtime story than her usual one, Thomas overheard and intervened. Emma has a specific reading schedule, he informed me. Monday is Goodnight Moon, Tuesday is Where the Wild Things Are, and so on. It's important for children to have structure. When I gently suggested that spontaneity could also be beneficial, Thomas's expression hardened. Katherine and I have researched childhood development extensively, he said. Our system works for our family. Katherine stood silently behind him, eyes downcast. Later, when we were alone, I asked her about this rigid approach. It does seem a bit structured, I ventured carefully. When you were little, you loved choosing different stories each night. Thomas is just trying to create stability, she defended. The kids thrive on routine. But I noticed how Noah's shoulders relaxed when Thomas wasn't home, how Emma's laughter became more frequent and unrestrained. The first real conflict came when I made lasagna for dinner using Martin's old family recipe that Catherine had loved as a child. Mom, this smells amazing, Catherine said as she entered the kitchen. You didn't have to cook. I wanted to contribute, I replied, happy to see her genuine smile. Remember how you always requested this for your birthday dinners? Her eyes softened with the memory. Dad would always sneak me extra cheese when you weren't looking. For a moment, my daughter was back, the weight temporarily lifted from her shoulders. Then the front door opened and Thomas arrived home. What's that smell? He asked, frowning as he entered the kitchen. Mom made lasagna, Catherine said, her voice immediately smaller. Thomas surveyed the set table, the garlic bread, the salad I had prepared. I thought we agreed on chicken stir-fry tonight, he said to Catherine. It's on the meal plan on the refrigerator. I thought a change might be nice, I interjected. This was Catherine's favorite growing up. Thomas turned to me, his expression controlled but cold. While your initiative is appreciated, Claudia, we have a system in this house. The meal plan ensures balanced nutrition and prevents food waste. It's just one night, I said lightly. Spontaneity can be fun. Perhaps in your household, he replied. But here we value organization and consistency. Throughout dinner, he criticized various aspects of the meal: too much garlic pasta, overcooked sauce, too acidic. Each critique was delivered with a smile, as if he was being helpful rather than demeaning. This is why we stick to the plan, he told the children. Structure leads to excellence. Catherine remained silent, picking at her food. After dinner, when Thomas took the children upstairs for bath time, she quickly began cleaning up. I'm sorry about dinner, I said. I should have checked the meal plan. It's fine, she said, not meeting my eyes. The lasagna was delicious. Just next time, maybe check with Thomas first about any changes. Catherine. I hesitated, then pressed on. Are you happy, sweetheart? Her hands stilled on the dishes. For a moment, I thought she might confide in me. Then her shoulders straightened. Of course I'm happy. Thomas provides wonderfully for us. We have a beautiful home, the children go to excellent schools, and I don't have to work. Many women would envy my life. But she hadn't answered my actual question, I realized. She had listed the external trappings of her life, not her emotional state. Before I could pursue the conversation, Thomas called down for her. Catherine, Emma is asking for you to read her story tonight. Coming, she called, relief evident in her voice as she hurried away from our conversation. That night, I lay awake thinking about the changes in my daughter. The Catherine I raised had been spirited and independent with strong opinions and the confidence to express them. This new Catherine seemed to exist in Thomas's shadow, anticipating his wants and needs before her own. I told myself not to overreact. Every marriage involved compromises, and perhaps Catherine truly valued the order Thomas brought to their lives. Maybe I was projecting my own discomfort onto their relationship. A few days later, Noah asked if I could help him with a school project about family history. Grandma, can you tell me stories about when Mom was little? I need to make a timeline. We spent a wonderful afternoon looking through photos I had brought and recording stories. Noah was particularly fascinated by Catherine's rebellious teenage years. Mom used to argue with you, and she dyed her hair purple once, he asked incredulously. Your mother was quite the independent spirit, I told him. She always stood up for what she believed in. When Catherine came home and saw our project spread across the dining room table, she initially smiled. But when Noah excitedly told her about the stories I had shared, her expression changed. Mom, those aren't really appropriate examples for Noah, she said quietly. Thomas and I are trying to teach the children about respect and obedience. I was just sharing our family history, I explained. The good, the challenging, all of it. That's what makes a complete picture. Catherine glanced nervously toward Thomas's home office. Please just stick to the positive stories, okay? Thomas feels strongly about presenting consistent values to the children. Later that evening, Thomas took me aside. Claudia, I understand you were telling Noah about Catherine's teenage rebellion. Just normal growing up stories, I said. Every child tests boundaries. We're raising our children with different values, he said firmly. Stories that undermine parental authority or glamorize disobedience are confusing to them. In the future, please check with Catherine or me before sharing such narratives. I was stunned into silence. Was he actually policing what memories I could share with my own grandchildren? But looking at his resolute expression, I realized arguing would only create more tension. I understand, I said, though I didn't. Not really. These incidents accumulated over the next few weeks. Thomas questioning my choice of books for the children, Thomas correcting my grammar at dinner, Thomas reorganizing the kitchen after I'd put away groceries. Each time Katherine witnessed these interactions, she would give me an apologetic look but never contradict her husband. The message became increasingly clear: Thomas's preferences ruled this household and everyone else was expected to fall in line. One evening, I overheard an argument between them. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but their voices carried from their bedroom down the hall. "She's trying her best, Thomas," Katherine was saying. "Mom just has different ways of doing things." "Different doesn't mean acceptable," Thomas replied. "She's undermining our system, Katherine. The children need consistency. She's only been here a month. She's still adjusting." "And who's adjusting more, Claudia or us? I've been very accommodating, but my patience has limits." I moved away quietly, not wanting to hear more. The knot in my stomach tightened. I was becoming increasingly certain that Thomas's system was less about effective household management and more about control. And somehow, over the years, my vibrant daughter had become accustomed to this control, perhaps not even recognizing it for what it was. The tension was building, and I feared what would happen when it finally broke, but I couldn't have anticipated just how painful that breaking point would be. As weeks passed, Thomas's treatment of me evolved from subtle criticism to overt demands. One morning, I found a handwritten list on the kitchen counter titled "Daily Tasks for Claudia." The list included cleaning all bathrooms, vacuuming the entire house, doing everyone's laundry, preparing all meals according to the meal plan, weeding the garden, and helping the children with homework. At the bottom was a note: "Please initial each task upon completion." I was stunned. This wasn't the arrangement we had discussed when I moved in. I had offered to help around the house, certainly, but this was a full-time housekeeping position without pay or recognition. When Katherine came downstairs, I showed her the list. "Did you know about this?" I asked quietly, not wanting the children to overhear. She glanced at it and looked away uncomfortably. "Thomas thought it would be helpful to have clear expectations. Since you're living here rent-free." "Katherine," I said, trying to keep my voice gentle, "I sold my house. I'm contributing to household expenses from that money. And I'm happy to help out, but this is excessive." "It's just until I get caught up with some things," she said vaguely. "Thomas thinks it's a fair exchange." "Thomas thinks," I echoed. "What do you think, Katherine?" She fidgeted with her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd noticed developing. "I think we should try to make this work. The kids love having you here." I decided to complete some of the tasks that day, hoping to demonstrate goodwill while planning a more thorough conversation with both Katherine and Thomas. But when Thomas returned that evening and inspected the house, his dissatisfaction was immediate. "The upstairs bathroom wasn't cleaned to standard," he said, holding up the list, "and the laundry hasn't been folded the way Katherine does it." "I did the best I could today," I replied evenly. "Perhaps we should discuss reasonable expectations for my contribution to the household." Thomas's expression hardened. "Katherine and I discussed this extensively. These tasks are the minimum contribution expected in exchange for your accommodation." "Thomas," I said carefully, "I'm not your housekeeper. I'm Katherine's mother and your children's grandmother. And as such, shouldn't you want to help your daughter? Katherine is exhausted trying to manage everything. If you're not willing to contribute meaningfully—" "Of course I want to help," I interrupted. "But there's a difference between helping and being treated like hired help." His eyes narrowed. "I see. Well, perhaps we misunderstood your intentions in coming here." That night, I tried again to talk privately with Katherine, but she evaded me. "Mom, please just try to work with Thomas's system. It's easier that way." The next incident occurred when I took Noah and Emma to the local park after school. They had begged to go, and since their homework was finished, I saw no reason to refuse. We had a wonderful time, the children playing on the swings and slides, while I watched from a nearby bench. When we returned, Thomas was waiting at the door, his expression thunderous. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "At Jefferson Park." I answered, surprised by his tone. "The kids wanted to play outside." "You didn't ask permission," he said. "You don't take my children anywhere without clearing it with Katherine or me first." Daddy, we had fun, Emma piped up. Grandma pushed us on the swings. Go to your rooms, both of you, Thomas ordered. Homework time. But we already finished, Noah protested. Now, Thomas said firmly. The children scurried upstairs, casting worried glances back at me. Once they were gone, Thomas turned on me. Do you have any idea what you've done? We have a schedule. The children have reading time after school, then structured play, then dinner. Now everything is disrupted. They're children, Thomas, I said. A little spontaneity is healthy. Don't presume to tell me what's healthy for my children, he snapped. You've undermined our parenting system since you arrived. Katherine appeared from the kitchen looking anxious. What's going on? Your mother took the children to the park without permission, Thomas informed her. Just the latest in her ongoing disregard for our household rules. I expected Katherine to defend me, or at least point out the absurdity of requiring permission for a grandmother to take her grandchildren to a nearby park. Instead, she looked at me with disappointment. Mom, you know we have a schedule. The children get confused when it's not followed. I felt as though I'd stepped into some bizarre alternate reality where taking children to a park was a transgression. They're not robots, Katherine, I said. They're children who wanted to play outside on a beautiful day. Oh, that's not your decision to make, Thomas interjected. In this house, Katherine and I decide what's best for our children. And when did you become such an authoritarian parent? I asked, my patience finally breaking. What happened to the Katherine who believed children should be allowed to explore and discover the world? That's enough, Thomas said sharply, Mema. Katherine is an excellent mother who puts her children's needs first. By following your rules without question, I shot back. Katherine placed herself between us. Stop it, both of you. The children will hear. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I'm sorry for disrupting the schedule. It won't happen again. But the incident marked a turning point. Thomas began restricting my time with the children, ensuring that either he or Katherine was always present when I interacted with them. The spontaneous moments of connection that had made my move worthwhile were systematically eliminated. Around this time, I began noticing other troubling patterns. Thomas controlled all household finances, with Katherine having to ask for even small amounts of spending money. He checked her phone, frequently scrolling through her messages and calls. When old friends of hers called, he would often answer and explain that Katherine was too busy to talk. One morning, I noticed Katherine wearing a long-sleeved blouse despite the warm weather. When she reached for a coffee mug, her sleeve pulled back slightly, revealing a fading bruise on her forearm. My heart stopped. Katherine, what happened to your arm? She quickly pulled down her sleeve. Oh, I bumped into the door handle. Clumsy me. The explanation was too quick, too rehearsed. I recognized the signs from my years working with a domestic violence outreach program through the library, but confronting her directly would only push her away. You know you can talk to me about anything, I said carefully. There's nothing to talk about, she replied, avoiding my eyes. Everything's fine. But everything was clearly not fine. Katherine was becoming increasingly withdrawn, flinching at sudden movements and constantly checking Thomas's mood before speaking or acting. The vibrant daughter I had raised was disappearing before my eyes. I reached out to my old friend Barbara, who had experienced an abusive relationship years ago. We met for coffee while Katherine believed I was grocery shopping. I'm so worried about her, I confided. Thomas controls everything, and I think it may be getting physical. Barbara listened intently. Has she admitted anything to you? No, she defends him or changes the subject. That's common, Barbara said. The isolation happens gradually. By the time it becomes obvious to outsiders, the victim often doesn't recognize what's happening. They've been conditioned to believe they deserve the treatment. What can I do? I asked desperately. If I confront Thomas, it could make things worse for Katherine. If I try to force her to leave, she might cut me off completely. Document everything, Barbara advised. Dates, times, specific behaviors. Connect with local resources so you're ready when she asks for help. And most importantly, stay present. Don't let him push you away, because that's exactly what he wants. I followed her advice, keeping a detailed journal of Thomas's controlling behaviors and Catherine's responses. I researched local domestic violence resources and spoke confidentially with a counselor about the situation. Meanwhile, I tried to maintain my relationship with the children who were showing signs of stress themselves. Noah had become increasingly quiet and withdrawn, while Emma had developed nervous habits like hair twirling and nail biting. One afternoon, I found Noah hiding in his closet, crying silently. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, sitting beside him. "Daddy yelled at Mommy again," he whispered. "He said she was stupid and couldn't do anything right. Then he broke her favorite vase." My blood ran cold. "Does Daddy yell at Mommy often?" Noah nodded, his small face crumpled in distress. "Sometimes he grabs her arms really hard or pushes her. He says it's her fault for making him angry." I held my grandson close, my mind racing. The situation was worse than I'd feared. Not only was Katherine being abused, but the children were witnessing it, absorbing the toxic dynamics as their model for relationships. "Noah, listen to me," I said gently. "None of this is your fault or your mom's fault. Sometimes adults have problems they need help with." "Can you help, Grandma?" he asked, his eyes pleading. "I'm going to try, sweetheart," I promised. "I'm going to try very hard." That evening, Thomas came home in a particularly foul mood. He criticized dinner, complained about the house not being clean enough, and snapped at the children for being too noisy. I watched Katherine shrink into herself, with each cutting remark, her eyes fixed on her plate. When Thomas knocked over his water glass and blamed her for placing it too close to his elbow, something in me snapped. "That's enough, Thomas," I said quietly but firmly. The table fell silent. Thomas turned to me slowly, his expression dangerous. "Excuse me." I said that's enough. You've been criticizing everyone since you walked through the door. These are people who love you, not punching bags for your bad mood. Katherine looked up in alarm. "Mom, it's fine. Thomas had a difficult day at work." "That doesn't give anyone the right to treat their family with disrespect," I maintained. Thomas's voice was ice cold. "Claudia, you are a guest in my home. You do not get to comment on how I interact with my family. When that interaction becomes abusive, someone needs to speak up," I replied, holding his gaze. A terrible silence fell. The children looked between us with wide, frightened eyes. Katherine had gone pale. Thomas stood slowly. "Children, go to your rooms, now." After they reluctantly left, he turned to me. "How dare you accuse me of abuse in front of my children? You've overstepped for the last time." "I've seen the bruises, Thomas," I said quietly. "I've heard you belittling Katherine. The children have seen it too." Katherine gasped. "Mom, stop, please." Thomas turned to her. "You've been complaining to your mother about me behind my back." "No, Thomas, I swear," Katherine said quickly, panic in her eyes. "She hasn't said anything," I interjected, not wanting him to redirect his anger toward her. "She didn't have to. I have eyes." Thomas slammed his fist on the table, making us both jump. "I've had enough of your interference, your undermining, your disrespect. You turned my children against me with your park visits and your stories. You've tried to turn my wife against me with your accusations." He pointed at Katherine. "You need to decide right now. Either your mother accepts her place in this household and stops interfering, or she leaves. Tonight." Katherine looked at him in shock. "Thomas, please, she has nowhere to go." "That's not my problem," he said coldly. "I've been more than generous allowing her to live here. But I won't have her poisoning our family with her outdated ideas and baseless accusations." Katherine turned to me, tears in her eyes. "Mom, please, just apologize to Thomas. Tell him you were wrong." In that moment, I saw how deep Thomas's control went. Katherine was terrified, willing to sacrifice her own mother to placate him. And if I stayed under these conditions, accepting this treatment, what message would that send to my grandchildren? That abuse should be tolerated, that standing up for yourself and others was wrong. The choice was painful but clear. "I'm sorry, Katherine," I said softly. "I can't apologize for telling the truth, and I can't stay here and watch him hurt you and the children." Thomas smiled triumphantly. "Well, there's your answer, Katherine. Your mother has chosen to leave rather than respect our family." Katherine's face crumpled. Mom, please, we need you here. You do need me, I agreed. But not as a silent witness to abuse. Thomas stepped toward me menacingly. You will pack your things and be gone by morning. And don't expect to see the children again. You've lost that privilege. I looked at him calmly, refusing to show fear. Threatening me doesn't change the truth, Thomas. And someday Katherine will see it too. I turned and walked upstairs to my room, my heart breaking, but my resolve firm. Behind me, I could hear Thomas berating Katherine for not supporting him more forcefully. That night, I lay awake planning my next steps. I couldn't simply leave town and abandon Katherine and the children to Thomas's escalating abuse. But staying in the house under his conditions would only enable the situation. By morning, I had formulated a plan. When I came downstairs with my suitcase, Thomas was waiting, clearly expecting a confrontation or pleas for reconsideration. Instead, I smiled at him calmly, which visibly unsettled him. I kissed my tearful grandchildren goodbye, promising to see them again soon. And when Katherine delivered Thomas's final ultimatum, her voice shaking, "Mom, either you accept your role here or you have to leave." I maintained my composure. I understand, I said, picking up my suitcase. Then I walked out the door, my head held high. Thomas might think he'd won, removing the one person willing to challenge his authority. But he had no idea what was coming. I hadn't given up. I was just changing my strategy. The weight of my decision felt enormous as I drove away from Katherine's house that morning. Thomas stood in the doorway, arms crossed with a satisfied expression, while Katherine and the children watched tearfully from the window. It took every ounce of self-control not to turn around, to not give in, just to remain close to them. But I knew that staying would only normalize Thomas's behavior and teach my grandchildren that abuse was acceptable. I checked into a modest hotel on the outskirts of Boston, needing time to formulate a proper plan. My first call was to Barbara, who immediately offered her guest room. "You did the right thing," she assured me, as painful as it was. "It feels like abandonment," I admitted, my voice breaking. "Like I've left them behind in a burning building." "No," Barbara said firmly. "You've gone to call the fire department. There's a difference." The next day, I began apartment hunting, finding a small one-bedroom unit in a building just 15 minutes from Katherine's house. It was more expensive than I'd planned, consuming a significant portion of my house sale proceeds, but the proximity was essential. I needed to remain accessible when Katherine or the children reached out for help. Once settled, I connected with a local domestic violence advocacy center. Jessica, a counselor with over 20 years of experience, met with me to discuss the situation. "The most dangerous time for victims is when they're preparing to leave or have just left," she explained. "Thomas has shown escalating controlling behavior and some physical aggression. If Katherine tries to leave, the risk increases substantially." "She's not ready to leave yet," I said. "She's too frightened and dependent." Jessica nodded understandingly. "That's common. Your presence threatened Thomas because you were a connection to Katherine's pre-abuse life, a reminder of her independence. Abusers work systematically to sever those connections." "What can I do now that I'm not in the house?" I asked. "Document everything," Jessica advised. "Dates, times, specific incidents. If you can maintain any contact with Katherine or the children, do so, but be careful. Thomas will be monitoring her closely." "He checks her phone and controls who she talks to," I confirmed. "Then we need creative ways to stay connected," Jessica said. She provided resources on safety planning and helping abuse victims, including ways to communicate that wouldn't alert Thomas. With Jessica's guidance, I contacted a family law attorney to understand my grandparent rights. While these were limited, the attorney explained that documentation of abuse could potentially support supervised visitation or even temporary custody in extreme situations. I also began researching Thomas's background, something I regretted not doing before moving in. Through public records and social media, I discovered he had a previous marriage that ended abruptly 6 years before he met Katherine. Further digging revealed a restraining order filed by his ex-wife, though it had later been dropped. This pattern confirmed my worst fears. Thomas hadn't suddenly become controlling with Katherine. This was his established behavior that had likely been hidden during their courtship. For the first 5 days after leaving, I heard nothing from Katherine or the children. I drove by the house occasionally, hoping to catch a glimpse of them, but the curtains remained drawn. I left messages on Catherine's phone carefully worded to not antagonize Thomas if he heard them. Catherine, it's Mom. I miss you and the children. I'm staying in Boston for now. Please call when you can. On the sixth day, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Claudia, it's Diane, Catherine's friend from her book club. My heart raced. Yes, Diane. Is Catherine all right? She asked me to call you. Thomas has taken her phone away completely now. She wants you to know she and the children are okay, but things are tense. Thomas is furious that you're still in Boston. He expected you to leave the area. Can I talk to her? I asked desperately. Not directly. He's barely letting her out of his sight. But she managed to slip me a note during book club asking me to contact you. Please tell her I'm nearby. I have an apartment now. I'll help however I can. Diane's voice lowered. She's scared, Claudia. I've known Catherine for years and I've never seen her like this. She jumps at every sound. Thomas calls her repeatedly when she's out demanding to know exactly where she is and who she's with. Has he hurt her physically? I asked, dreading the answer. There was a pause. She wouldn't say directly, but she was wearing makeup heavier than usual and she winced when Joan hugged her. My stomach clenched. Diane, would you be willing to help me maintain contact with her? Of course, she replied without hesitation. Several of us in the book club have been worried about Catherine for a while now. We just didn't know how to help. You're helping now, I assured her, and you might be her lifeline. Through Diane, I was able to establish a communication channel with Catherine. Messages were exchanged through notes passed at book club meetings, which Thomas still allowed Catherine to attend, likely because they were held at a neighbor's house where he could easily check on her. A week after I left, I received the call I had been both hoping for and dreading. It was late evening and the number was blocked. Grandma? Noah's voice was a whisper. Noah? I gasped. Sweetheart, are you okay? I'm using Dad's tablet to call you, he said, his voice shaking. He doesn't know. Emma and I miss you so much. I miss you too, darling, so very much. Dad's been really mad since you left. He yells all the time. Last night he pushed Mom against the wall because dinner was cold. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. Is your mom okay? She cried in the bathroom for a long time. Dad told us it was because she was disappointed in us for being noisy, but I know that's not true. Noah, listen to me carefully. This isn't your fault or your sister's fault. None of it is. Dad says if we were better behaved, he wouldn't have to get angry. That's not true, I said firmly. Adults are responsible for their own actions, not children. I heard muffled voices in the background. I have to go, Noah whispered urgently. Dad's coming upstairs. Noah, wait. Do you or Emma or your mom need help right now? Are you in danger tonight? I don't think so. Dad's going on a business trip tomorrow for 3 days. Mom seems happier when he's gone. This information was crucial. I love you, Noah. Tell Emma and your mom I love them too. Will we ever see you again, Grandma? Yes, sweetheart, I promise you will. After the call ended, I sat in my apartment shaking with anger and fear. The situation was deteriorating faster than I had anticipated. Thomas's abuse was escalating, and the children were being psychologically harmed by witnessing it. I immediately called Jessica at the Advocacy Center and explained the new information. Thomas will be away for 3 days starting tomorrow. This might be our best chance to reach Catherine. Jessica agreed. This is the window we've been waiting for. Without Thomas there to monitor her, she might be more willing to talk openly. We formulated a plan. Diane would invite Catherine and the children for a playdate at her house where I would be waiting. This approach would give Catherine the choice to talk or leave, maintaining her agency in the situation. The next day was the longest of my life. I waited anxiously at Diane's house, uncertain if Catherine would come or how she would react to seeing me. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart nearly stopped. Diane opened the door. Catherine, so glad you and the kids could make it. There was a moment of silence then, Noah's excited voice. Grandma! He burst into the living room, followed by Emma, both children throwing themselves into my arms. Catherine stood frozen in the doorway, her face a mix of shock, relief, and fear. Mom, she whispered. I'll give you all some privacy, Diane said tactfully, slipping out to her back patio. I held out my hand to Catherine. I'm not here to pressure you, sweetheart. I just wanted to see you all to make sure you're okay. Catherine's composure crumbled. She crossed the room and collapsed into my arms, sobbing as though a dam had broken. The children clung to both of us, forming a tight circle of desperate connection. When Catherine finally calmed enough to speak, she pulled back slightly, revealing a fading bruise near her temple that makeup hadn't completely concealed. He's getting worse, Mom, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Ever since you left, it's like he doesn't even try to hide it anymore. What do you mean? I asked gently. Before he was careful, the criticisms were always when we were alone. He'd grab my arm but never leave marks where anyone could see. He'd say he was sorry afterward, blame work stress, or say I provoked him. She took a shuddering breath. Now he doesn't care who sees. He pushed me against the wall in front of the children. He threw a plate that nearly hit Emma. He says it's all my fault for taking your side. Has he threatened you directly? I asked, trying to gauge the immediate danger. Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face. He said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd take the children where I'd never find them, that he'd destroy me first. The children had moved to play with toys Diane had set out, giving us some privacy to talk. I held my daughter's hands tightly. Catherine, listen to me. This isn't going to get better. It's going to get worse. You and the children aren't safe. I know, she whispered, and the admission seemed to take the last of her strength. I've known for a while, but I don't know how to leave. He controls all our money. He monitors everywhere I go. He's convinced me I can't survive without him. You can, I assured her, and you won't be alone. I have resources, people who can help. But you have to be ready to take that step. Catherine looked over at her children playing quietly but with frequent glances in our direction as if assuring themselves we were still there. They deserve better than this, she said. I kept telling myself I was staying for them, that they needed their father. But I'm teaching them that this is what love looks like. It's not too late to show them something different, I said. We spent the next 2 hours developing a preliminary safety plan with Jessica, who joined us by phone. Catherine would gather essential documents and irreplaceable keepsakes while Thomas was away storing them at Diane's house. She would establish a secret email account to communicate with me and the support team. Most importantly, she would call immediately if Thomas returned early or if the situation became dangerous. When it was time for them to leave, Catherine hugged me fiercely. I'm so sorry I let him push you away, she said. You were right about everything. Don't apologize, I told her. He isolated you deliberately. It's what abusers do. Noah tugged at my sleeve. Are you coming home with us, Grandma? Not today, sweetheart. But soon we'll all be together again, I promise. As I watched them drive away, I felt a complex mix of hope and fear. Catherine had taken the first step toward freedom, but the most dangerous part of the journey still lay ahead. The next 2 days were a flurry of activity. I secured a larger apartment with 3 bedrooms using most of my remaining savings from the house sale. Jessica helped arrange for emergency protection orders to be ready when needed. The domestic violence shelter prepared space for Catherine and the children if necessary. Everything was in place when I received a frantic call from Diane. Thomas came home early, she said, her voice tense. Catherine just texted me. She's locked herself in the bathroom pretending to be sick, but she's terrified. Why? What happened? I demanded. He found Noah's tablet with the call history showing he contacted you. He's in a rage. My blood ran cold. Call the police right now. Tell them there's a domestic violence situation with children present. I grabbed my keys and drove to Catherine's house, my heart pounding. As I pulled onto their street, I could see police cars already in the driveway, lights flashing. Neighbors stood on their lawns watching the commotion. I parked and ran toward the house, stopping when an officer blocked my path. Ma'am, you can't go in there. This is an active situation. I'm Claudia Wilson, Catherine's mother, I explained breathlessly. The children's grandmother. What's happening? Before he could answer, the front door opened. A female officer emerged, leading Emma by the hand. My granddaughter's face was streaked with tears, but she appeared physically unharmed. When she saw me, she broke away and ran into my arms. "Grandma, Daddy hurt Mommy. The policemen are taking him away." I held her close, looking up as more officers appeared. One was escorting Thomas handcuffed and protesting loudly about his rights. Another supported Katherine, who had a fresh cut on her lip and was clutching Noah protectively. When Katherine saw me, relief washed over her face. "Mom," she whispered, "you came. Always." I promised, embracing her and Noah with my free arm, Emma still clinging to me. "I will always come when you need me." As Thomas was placed in a police car, he locked eyes with me, his expression murderous. But for the first time since I'd met him, I felt no fear. His power was broken. The officers explained that Katherine would need to give a statement and likely go to the hospital to document her injuries. Child Protective Services would be involved due to the children witnessing abuse. "I'll stay with the children," I assured her. "Take all the time you need. We'll be waiting when you're done." That night, Katherine and the children stayed in my new apartment. As the children slept exhausted from the trauma and emotion, Katherine and I sat at the kitchen table, cups of tea growing cold between us. "I should have listened to you from the beginning," she said. "I knew something was wrong in my marriage, but I'd convinced myself it was normal, that all marriages had these problems." "Abuse happens gradually," I reminded her. "Thomas isolated you from friends and family, made you financially dependent, undermined your confidence. That's how abusers operate." "What happens now?" she asked, looking frighteningly young and vulnerable. "One day at a time," I said, taking her hand. "You'll get a restraining order. We'll work with the police and courts. Most importantly, you and the children will heal." "He'll fight for custody," she said, fear flickering in her eyes. "Let him try," I said firmly. "We have evidence, witnesses, police reports. And we have something he doesn't." "What's that?" I smiled at my brave daughter. "The truth and each other." Katherine squeezed my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on me even when I pushed you away." "That's what mothers do," I said simply. "We keep loving, keep fighting for our children no matter what." As Katherine finally slept, I stood watching over my family, feeling both profound sadness for what they had endured and fierce determination for the road ahead. Thomas had thought my departure was his victory, the final removal of an obstacle to his complete control. He couldn't have been more wrong. Sometimes walking away isn't surrender. Sometimes it's the first step towards saving those you love. The weeks following Thomas's arrest were both challenging and healing. Katherine received a temporary restraining order, immediately followed by a permanent one after the court hearing. Thomas was charged with domestic assault, child endangerment, and violating a previous restraining order we discovered had been filed by his ex-wife. Our new apartment became a sanctuary of recovery. The first few nights, Katherine and the children had nightmares, often waking in tears. We established new bedtime routines with warm milk and gentle stories, creating an atmosphere of safety and predictability. Slowly, the tension began to ease from their shoulders, their voices becoming louder, their laughter more frequent. Katherine met regularly with a therapist specializing in domestic abuse recovery. The children started play therapy, using art and storytelling to process their experiences. Noah, in particular, struggled with confused loyalties, sometimes defending his father before dissolving into tears of relief that the fighting had stopped. "Is it okay that I still love Dad sometimes?" he asked me one evening as I tucked him in. "Of course it is, I assured him. "You can love someone and still know that their behavior is wrong. Your feelings are never wrong, Noah." Emma was more straightforward in her relief. "I like that nobody yells anymore," she told her therapist, "and Mommy smiles now." Katherine's transformation was the most profound. Initially, she moved through the apartment tentatively, as if waiting for criticism or correction. She would ask permission for the smallest decisions, from what to cook for dinner to whether she could take a bath. "You don't need to ask, sweetheart," I reminded her gently. "This is your home too. You make your own choices now." Gradually, the Katherine I had raised began to re-emerge. She started by redecorating the apartment, choosing bright colors and comfortable furnishings that Thomas would never have permitted. She enrolled in an online course to update her accounting skills, planning to eventually return to work. Most importantly, she reconnected with old friends who had been systematically excluded from her life during her marriage. Diane and the book club ladies became regular visitors, filling our home with conversation and support. Thomas, meanwhile, refused to accept his loss of control. He hired an expensive attorney and filed for full custody of the children, claiming Katherine was unstable and that I was poisoning the children against him. His parents, wealthy and influential, supported his efforts, portraying him as a devoted father, being victimized by vindictive women. The legal battles were exhausting and expensive. I used the last of my savings to help Katherine secure proper representation. The evidence was overwhelming: police reports, medical records documenting Katherine's injuries, testimony from neighbors who had witnessed incidents, and most damning, Noah's heartbreaking testimony about watching his father hurt his mother. 3 months after the separation, the family court judge ruled in Katherine's favor, granting her full custody, with Thomas receiving limited supervised visitation only if he completed an extensive batterer's intervention program and anger management therapy. His parents were furious, threatening appeals and further legal action. "They're just like him," Katherine observed after a particularly hostile court appearance. "They believe money and influence should let them control everything and everyone." "But they don't control us anymore," I reminded her. As spring turned to summer, our new family unit established its own rhythms and traditions. Sunday brunches became a weekly celebration, with everyone helping to prepare favorite dishes. We planted a small container garden on our balcony, the children delighting in watching their herbs and vegetables grow. Weekend trips to museums, parks, and libraries helped create new positive memories to replace the fearful ones. Katherine found part-time work at a local accounting firm, building her confidence along with her resume. The owner, a compassionate woman who had survived her own abusive relationship, offered flexible hours that accommodated the children's needs. I resumed volunteer work at the public library, reading to children during story hour and feeling useful again. Through this, I connected with other grandparents raising or helping raise grandchildren, forming a support network that provided both practical advice and emotional understanding. One evening, as Katherine and I sat on the balcony watching the sunset while the children played inside, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I've been thinking about that day you left," she said, "when Thomas gave you that ultimatum and I stood there asking you to accept his terms." "That wasn't you speaking," I said. "That was fear. Still, I chose him over you. I betrayed you when you were only trying to protect us." I took her hand. "Trauma bonds are powerful, Katherine. They distort perception, priority, even love. You didn't betray me. You were trapped in a system designed to isolate and control you." She wiped away tears. "When you walked out with your suitcase smiling so calmly, I thought I'd lost you forever. I was terrified, but also in awe of your courage." "I was terrified too," I admitted. "Walking away from you and the children was the hardest thing I've ever done. But staying would have only enabled Thomas's behavior and shown the children that abuse should be tolerated." "You taught me what real strength looks like," Katherine said. "Not dominance or control, but the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it breaks your heart." A year after leaving Thomas's house, we celebrated with a small party. Katherine had been promoted to full-time at her firm. Noah and Emma were thriving in school, their nightmares largely replaced by dreams of future adventures. I had found purpose in volunteer work with domestic violence survivors, sharing my experience to help others recognize and escape abuse. Thomas had eventually violated the restraining order, attempting to confront Katherine at her workplace. The incident resulted in his probation being revoked, sending him to jail for 6 months. His parents had finally backed down from their legal harassment, perhaps finally recognizing the damage their son had done. Life wasn't perfect. We still had moments of sadness and setbacks. The children sometimes struggled with complex feelings about their father. Katherine occasionally fell back into patterns of seeking permission or apologizing unnecessarily. But these moments became less frequent, less overwhelming. On the anniversary evening, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Katherine and I sat in our living room, photographs spread across the coffee table. She had been creating a family history album documenting not just the past, but our new present. "Look at this, Mutz," she said, showing me a picture from the previous month's beach trip. In it, she stood with the children, all three laughing as waves crashed around their legs. The joy in their faces was unmistakable, unrestrained. "That's who we really are," I said. Not victims or survivors, though we are those things too. We're a family who loves fiercely and finds joy despite everything. Katherine nodded, tucking the photo into the album. I used to think strength meant enduring pain silently, that sacrifice was love. Now I understand that real strength is knowing your worth and demanding respect. That's the lesson I hope Noah and Emma carry forward, I said. Not the trauma, but the healing. Not the fear, but the courage. They will, Katherine assured me, because they have us to show them. As I prepared for bed that night, I thought about the journey we had traveled. From the day I arrived at Katherine's house full of hope, through the gradual recognition of abuse, to that pivotal moment when I smiled, picked up my suitcase and walked away, not in surrender, but in strategic retreat. Thomas had believed he'd won that day. He couldn't see that by forcing me out, he had actually set in motion his own downfall. Free from his monitoring, I had been able to gather resources, connect with advocates, and prepare a safe path for Katherine and the children. Sometimes love means staying and fighting. Sometimes it means walking away to fight from a different angle. The wisdom lies in knowing which approach serves those you love best. I had learned that my worth wasn't determined by others' treatment of me. That standing up for yourself and those you love isn't selfish but essential. That family isn't defined by obligation or control but by mutual respect and care. Most importantly, I had learned that it's never too late to start again, to rebuild what was broken, to create something new and beautiful from the ashes of pain. I thought of all the women still trapped in situations like Katherine's, believing they had no options, no escape. I thought of the children watching and learning destructive patterns, carrying them forward unless someone intervened. My journey wasn't over. Neither was Katherine's or the children's. Healing is a lifelong process, not a destination. But we were moving forward together, each step taking us further from fear and closer to the peaceful, joyful life we deserved. That night, I slept deeply and dreamlessly without the anxiety that had plagued me for so long. In the morning, I awoke to the sounds of my grandchildren laughing in the kitchen, my daughter singing along to the radio as she made breakfast. These ordinary moments, once taken for granted, now felt like miracles. This was the true measure of our victory, not just escaping abuse, but reclaiming joy. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved in order to truly help them? Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most healing outcomes. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support more stories of resilience and recovery. Remember, you're never alone in your struggles, and it's never too late to reclaim your worth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you find strength in your own.